with the City of Takoma Arts and Humanities Commission. And I'd like to thank you all for coming tonight to this performance, which should be really great. There are some flyers outside with upcoming events. I'll just highlight the next one, which will be next Saturday at 1 p.m., Saturday, November 2nd. Dance Journey Along the Silk Road. The Silk Road Dance Company will be doing dances and performances of nomadic groups, oasis dwellers, and royal courts with Uzbek, Iranian, Kazakh, and Afghan influences. That one will be great. If you like this one, I'm sure you'll like that one too. Also of note, on third Thursdays, they have poetry readings here. We also have film festivals and lectures, so please grab a brochure. I want to now introduce the group Don Si, who's going to be performing a world music concert. Chinese dulcimer player Chao Tian They and percussionist Tom Teasley. They have CDs for sale outside after the performance, and there is a suggested donation of $10. And with that, I would like to welcome the group to the stage. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We really appreciate your coming out. Game 3 of the World Series is kind of a hard one to beat, but we're very appreciative and really enjoy being able to present our music for you. My lovely and talented collaborator, Chao Tian, has traveled all over the world playing her instrument, the Chinese dulcimer, that she'll tell you a little bit more about later. But I wanted to just briefly talk about kind of the process of the way that we create music. Everything that we do is entirely improvised, and we do rehearse, but rather than rehearsing specific tunes or pieces, we rehearse musical concepts. So, and a lot of that is the way that we trade back and forth and working with dynamics and slowing down and speeding up. And so what you all are witnessing is very much kind of like being in somebody's living room for a very intimate conversation. We're going to talk a little bit more about the instruments and maybe a little bit more about our process, but I just wanted to kind of share that with you right off the bat so that you can appreciate what you're experiencing. So, since I have this instrument, maybe you are familiar with this, but this is the Irish bodhrán that I play with almost every possible technique except the traditional Irish version. It's interesting to me. This is part of the frame drum family, and that thousands of years ago, people all over the world were playing these drums without each knowing what the other were doing. So. I use a lot of techniques that are from ancient Mesopotamia, where I snap my fingers like this. I was in Iraq a few years ago. I tour as a cultural diplomat for the State Department sometimes, and had been playing with, and I collaborate with people who've been playing this instrument since the beginning of time, I guess, you know, in their ancestry. But I find it very interesting to start to combine the different styles. So I'm also going to just run through this, which is, I need the microphone. So this is a stroke that they use in South Italian tamburella playing, where you play 3 strokes with one hand. There's a small tambourine they play in India called the kanjera, where you change the pitch with the opposite hand. So I combine that with a Italian stroke. And then this is a stroke I borrowed from flamenco guitar playing, and this is our Indian tabla strokes. So I find it very interesting to take an instrument from one part of the world and apply a playing technique from an entirely different part of the world. And Chao on that last piece, we were kind of digging into Middle Eastern influences, and so she was playing like an instrument that you might want to talk about just briefly.
Yeah. So I will give a brief introduction about this instrument. So the instrument what I played is a Chinese dulcimer. Its Chinese name is called Yangqin, Y-A-N-G-Q-I-N. So Chinese dulcimer is closely connected with the world since it's originally from Middle Eastern Iranian centaur, and it has many similar features with the Appalachian hammer dulcimer and the other hammer dulcimers around the world, like the Hungarian timbalom and the German hackblät. So this instrument has, a Chinese dulcimer has 147 strings for the standard one, the bigger one. So this is a smaller one I brought for travel easily, right? So it has less strings, but still like 100, more than 120 strings on that one. The different between Chinese dulcimer and hammer dulcimer here is we use bamboo hammers, so it's very flexible. So I can do many special techniques on Chinese dulcimer, like the single hand roll, and it's very light to roll on the dulcimer. And also the notes arrangement is different, but we use a chromatic scale, like. So we can also play some Western classic music. Yeah, that's it.
Chao, in addition to being a virtuoso on that instrument, she's also a fabulous percussionist. We just played a show, the White Snake, where we were set up like this with a duo, but she was also playing a Chinese drum and gong and things like that. And so we'd like to play a piece that's rather like something on our CD. It's called Rolling Walnuts. So you might imagine what it would be like if there were some walnuts kind of rolling down the stairs. Thank you. Putting together a collaboration like this is fascinating because we can just kind of draw into or from the well of the musics of the world, right? And it's impossible for me to really take on any kind of music at all without paying reference to the American jazz tradition. So you see this conglomeration that I've got, right, looks a little bit like a traditional jazz drum set, but I've chosen to use different instruments. So this bass drum voice is a large Brazilian pandeiro. This is another pandeiro that I use where a floor tom would be. And the djembe I use where a snare drum would be, and these are where the mounted tom-toms would be, and my drummer's throne is a cajon. So it allows me to tap into that jazz drummer four-part coordination, but use a variety of different exotic sounds. So we're going to pay homage to one of my drumming heroes, whose name is Elvin Jones. And this is also similar to something that we did before on our recording, and it's called Full of Questions. And so what we're looking for is a lot of the ebb and flow, and we'll fall into a groove and then kind of fall out. It's almost like Tai Chi breathing, if you can imagine such a thing set to music. recording called Boiling Water. And Chao came up with such a lovely description of it. I'm going to let her describe what it's about.
So we have a technique on Chinese dulcimer. We use a slight ring. It's a metal ring. I wear that, so I use that on the string. So kind of a slight guitar. So this is a very special. Since Chinese music has different flavor, right? So, but this one is kind of instrument from the Western world. So we want Chinese people adopt this well to play some Chinese style. So we try to bend note on this instrument. So sometimes we add the slat ring to play some traditional Chinese music. Like this, like a guzheng, the Chinese theater. Yes.
So maybe you'll start to feel the water starting to come to a boil. And this is the Egyptian darbuka that I'll be using in combination with the djembe.
Okay, so the next one, we're going to play two Chinese folk songs from southern China, Yunnan province. The first one is a very slow, beautiful melody and talking about a love story, and the second one is can be translated into you're riding a horse on a very high wall. I know it doesn't make sense, but yeah, the Chinese name is it. Enjoy that.
we're kind of a small, intimate group, and really, we do very much thank you for, for putting aside the Washington Nationals for a day and coming out and experiencing some conversations through music. Chao and I are going to Beijing in the end of next month. It will be my first time there, and I will promise that I will not speak nearly as eloquently in Chinese as she has tonight. But I thought that in the event that you're interested, I mean, this is a pretty unusual duo for a variety of reasons, right? One is that we don't come to the table with set repertoire. The other is the pairing of instruments is kind of unusual as well. So if we could entertain some questions and just kind of open this up as a dialogue. We'll play another piece or two also, but I thought this might be an opportunity for you to to converse with us, besides out at the CD table, of course. Are there any questions or comments? Yeah. Yeah. It's. Do you want me to answer that?
You can answer that. Yeah.
Okay.
Well. So you probably have noticed that Chao is much older than I am, right? So I guess it was 2 years ago. I was a mentor at Strathmore for their Artist in Residence program, and the following year, Chao was to be one of those artists in residence. And I guess she had met me maybe at the concert of one of my mentees. And she said, we should play together sometime. And then and she kept stalking me on Facebook. and finally, I acquiesced, only to discover that, I'm kind of joking, but only discover that we lived literally about like 5 minutes away from each other. And I'll just share with you that the first time that we got together was such a magical and emotional time for me. Our beloved bulldog of 13 years, we knew was going to be put to sleep the next day, and Chao came. So needless to say, I was fragile, and Chao came over and we played, and for me it was like it was somebody I had known forever, and there was just there were. Expressions that that I certainly could not express in language, that we were having this dialogue in music, and she invited me to play on her concert, and from then on we just decided this is an interesting collaboration, and it continues to grow as our friendship grows and as our musical rapport grows as well. So that was my great fortune.
I like to say 太快乐，
太快乐，
太快乐，这是你。
谢谢先生。
That is such a fantastic.
Thank you. Well, oh yeah.
So when you improvise together, are one of you, are you switching off on taking the lead, or I'm just curious? You never seem to have like a false start where one of you's like, oh wait a minute.
It's like what you and I are doing. Mm-hmm. You asked a question and I listened and responded, and so it's very much like that. And I guess in case you haven't been watching the news, there are Chinese and American negotiations are kind of in current news, and so part of what is interesting, I think, in looking at that, is that we have a dialogue that is almost entirely based on listening, and they have a dialogue that is mostly based on talking, and not so much listening. So if there was one instrument, if there was a third person in this, if we were a trio instead of a duo, I think that it would just be the listening ear, that happens. Since you kind of opened that question, and since we're game 3 of the World Series, don't tell me, we're gonna pretend that that I was trying to explain to Chao what I said. Chao, you know, there might not be many people. This is Game 3 in the World Series. She said, "What sport is that?" And so I started to try and give her a little background on baseball, and I got as far as, you know, somebody throws a ball and somebody else tries to hit it. So since we all know that much, most of us, I guess, we're going to do an improvisation that's kind of based on that, and so it will be even more obvious, I guess, since we're putting that into play. And running bases. When we recorded our record, and we started trying to find a way to work in the world of improvised music, but still have it have direction, and that there'd be cognitive thought behind it. So we started with words, and Chao came over to my studio. I have a house where there's a lot of glass, and it was in the summer, and so she said, "Give me a word," and I looked outside and I saw all these green leaves. So I said, "Green," and she said, "Light green or dark green?" So I said, "Okay, this is what I'm dealing with." So in that spirit, we're going to just kind of give another example of how that might work. But we're going to use the word softness.
What is that?
Let me see. Should we play one more? Sure. Okay. So I'm very interested in seeing how many pitches and how many different sounds I can get out of one instrument. And there's an African tradition where they play with one hand and one stick. So we're going to close this out, and our concept here, not that we're looking to run, because we will be running out to the CD table to talk to you there, but this is, and I've gotten into running recently myself. I thought I would never run again because I had some knee issues, but they seem to have alleviated. So Chao sometimes, when she's angry, when I look at her and I see that angry Chinese face, you know, that inspires me to run. again for coming out on this, baseball day. All right, go Nats! And thanks again to our great sound guys. Really, really great work today. We so much appreciate it. And thank you for inviting us, Jared.
And I'm Brendan. I'm the arts coordinator for the city. You can come outside and meet Chao and Tom, buy some CDs, and we're also